Cape Town-based author Desiree-Anne Martin shares a deep, honest account of how she went from the brutal life of addiction and depression and how she rose up from rock bottom to becoming a recovering addict that helps others deal with their own addiction. While all this is contained in her debut memoir titled We Don't Talk About It Ever, a girl who searched for love but found distraction instead. Well, without giving too much away, let's now chat to Desiree, who is joining us from our Cape Town studios. Desiree, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about this very personal and moving story. You start off the book by sharing what your childhood was like and how growing up in apartheid South Africa was like for you. And you went through an identity crisis. Take us through that.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. In terms of my identity crisis, I grew up in 1980s apartheid South Africa, and when I was younger, I wasn't actually aware that the color of your skin could make a difference to where you could go or what you could do or any of the activities that you could partake in. And it was only when my mother pointed out that my skin was too dark to sit in one of the carriages on the trains did I realize that skin color made a difference, and that catapulted me into an identity crisis where I wanted to be whatever I wasn't, which was I felt like I wasn't good enough, I felt like I wasn't white enough or pretty enough or any of those things.
Now, often it is the addiction of one thing that is the passageway and opens up the doorway for other addictions to take hold of you. Now, in the book, you talk about the time when you were in matric and how addiction for you started off by you, as you say, trying to become something you were not, using slimming tablets and eventually getting into alcohol and then being addicted to heroin. Take us through how your addiction to slimming tablets for you opened the passageway and made it easier for you to then get addicted to the next thing.
Sure, I'll do that. What had happened was that I moved to a co-ed school and suddenly there were boys there, and I felt that I wasn't attractive enough, and I thought that I would start by addressing what I considered my weight issues, which is actually a bit ridiculous looking back at photographs of myself there because I wasn't even remotely overweight. But when I took the slimming tablets, it not only addressed the weight issue, it made me feel differently. And that is the basis of addictions, is that it's a feelings disease. So people find either substances or they find activities that take them away from their feelings. So I started out with slimming tablets and slowly progressed to alcohol, which I had vowed I would never take because of the addictive family that I grew up in. But when I took my first sip of alcohol, it really did feel like I was coming home. And that progressed to other substances, anything to take me away from my reality effectively.
Desiree, you say you're a self-confessed codependent. What does that mean? And how did that lead you into getting into these toxic friendships and toxic relationships?
What that means for me is that my feelings are determined by your feelings, and that's when it came to friendships, when it came to romantic relationships. I became enmeshed in toxic relationships, trying to fix and change people, trying to be somebody that I was not. I really did think that the size and enormity of my love was big enough to change people, which is a bit of a wild dream. But I got enmeshed and I got addicted to people effectively. And so that kind of ran parallel with my substance addictions. And I would become anything and do anything in order to be loved and to seek approval.
You also had a list of things that you would never do, and the use of heroin needles was one of those things. But looking back at that list, you find that you've ticked many of those boxes. You've done many of the things you said you would never do.
I have indeed. I had a list of those things that I would never do. And as my addiction spiraled out of control, I slowly started ticking things off that list, which included committing crimes and committing fraud and stealing from my family and breaking trust in relationships. And eventually it ended up with me becoming a sex worker, which was probably last on my list. But that's what I eventually needed to tick off in order to support my habits.
Now, being doubtful, scared, embarrassed, vulnerable, and, you know, just having that self-doubt are just some of the emotions that you battled with when you were writing this book. How are you right now that the book is out there and you just simply can't take the words back now?
Well, initially I felt quite vulnerable because I realized that I had opened up my entire life to not only family and friends, but to complete strangers. But I must say that the response that I've been getting to the book has addressed that vulnerability. People have been saying to me that yes, that they felt that way and it resonates with them, and that they were in exactly the same position and their family had rules too, like not talking about things ever. And so it's been very gratifying getting responses from readers, and it's kind of ensured that for myself that I've done the right thing by speaking my truth.
Well, Desiree, that's where we'll leave it. All the best, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing for other people who are addicted to substances and giving them counseling. Well done on your debut memoir.